WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is WFYI News Now. It's May 8th, and I'm Aubriana Herron. On today's show, an anti-abortion group sues the state to regain access to terminated pregnancy reports. Caregivers raise concerns about changes to a Medicaid program for children with disabilities. And the ACLU is suing Purdue over a state law that many academics say dismantles tenure.
We want public higher education to constantly be looking over our shoulders because we fear that someone else is watching what we teach in the classroom.
Those stories coming up. But first, educators are frustrated. The state's Department of Education unveiled its plan last month for more than 10,000 of them to learn a new way to teach reading. But the requirements and timeline were met by a massive outcry. From WFYI's Education Desk, Rachel Fredette reports on how one educator with an unlikely background joins thousands that must complete state-sanctioned literacy training.
TJ Schneider has taught math at Lakeland High School in LaGrange for more than a decade. Schneider holds a special education teacher's license. It's from the start of his career. State leaders want him to learn a skill that he has no plans to ever teach. It's because of that license he holds. And he's not alone. New and veteran teachers have to complete literacy training and pass an exam before they can renew or apply for an initial license. The training must meet state rules and be aligned with the science of reading. Schneider said the 80 hours of training is an overreach, which could scare away some educators.
The understanding is, yes, we need to get better. We need to get our kids to read better, but we might end up shooting ourselves in the foot.
Indiana's largest teachers union has urged teachers to attend the State Board of Education meeting this week. I'm Rachel Fredette.
The Indiana Department of Health stopped sharing individual terminated pregnancy reports in December due to patient privacy concerns. The reports are completed by medical providers following an abortion in the state of Indiana and include data about the patient and the procedure. Now, an anti-abortion group is suing the agency, saying the decision violates Indiana's public records law. The anti-abortion group called Voices for Life filed to regain access to the terminated pregnancy reports. It says it needs access to the forms to hold people accountable to Indiana law. Last month, Attorney General Todd Rokita released an advisory opinion that made similar arguments about not having access to the reports. With fewer patients getting abortions in Indiana, the IDOH raised concerns last year that increased reporting requirements added in 2022 would make it easier to identify patients. The state's public access counselor agreed in an informal opinion, saying it would make sense for the agency to treat the form with the, quote, same confidentiality considerations as any other patient medical record, unquote. According to the lawsuit, the public access counselor refused to revise his opinion following Rokita's advisory opinion. And the Family and Social Services Administration plans to move forward with a significant change to a Medicaid program utilized by over 1,600 children with disabilities, despite concerns from caregivers. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports the agency responded to recommendations made by families of medically complex children to the governor.
FSSA says family caregivers will no longer be able to provide attendant care, instead shifting to the Structured Family Caregiving Program on July 1st. Indiana Families United for Care presented the governor and FSSA with recommendations to clarify the process, improve communication, and address concerns around how the transition is being handled. The group requested FSSA delay the transition by 90 days to clarify the process to families and other stakeholders, as well as allow families the time to find the right structured family caregiving provider. FSSA says the transition will continue as planned. The agency says this transition strategy allows legally responsible individuals to provide services in a fiscally responsible way that is in compliance with the state's approved waivers. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
The FSSA is hosting webinars every other Wednesday until July 1st to provide updates for Medicaid members under the age of 59, currently on the Aged and Disabled waiver. The next one will be on May 15th. And for our final story today, the American Civil Liberties Union of Indiana is suing Purdue over a state law passed this year that many academics say dismantles tenure. WFIU's Ethan Sandweiss has more.
Senate Enrolled Act 202 makes it possible for university trustees to revoke and punish professors if they fail to expose students to material from, quote, a variety of political or ideological frameworks. The plaintiffs are two professors at Purdue University Fort Wayne. They say the new requirements violate their First and 14th Amendments. The law supporters say it will only require professors to teach material with academic merit, but professors such as litigant Steve Carr fear its ambiguity would require them to give debunked theories equal time in the classroom.
We want public higher education to constantly be looking over our shoulders because we fear that someone else is watching what we teach in the classroom.
ACLU lawyer Stevie Proctor explains why their suit is against the Purdue Board of Trustees.
And the way that type of civil rights litigation works is that you have to sue the entity that's responsible for enforcing the law. And here, the statute requires that the universities and colleges be the enforcers of the law.
The legislation drew protests from universities across the state. IU President Pamela Whitten denounced the bill. Purdue spokesperson Tim Doty declined to comment on the lawsuit. For WFIU News, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Dodlin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share. And follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.